This is not your simple package from China. This is the cube of infinite retro emulation power. In today's video we are going to be doing a chit chat about this particular product called the G36 Pro. I've seen all kinds of different game boxes, but this one was kind of interesting. Man, is this a glitch in the YouTube matrix of what's going on? Because didn't I review this one with the X2 Pro craziness? But no, this seems to be something else, or at least I asked the sellers like what's going on over here, but he told me this is more like a better optimized version. So I was intrigued and was my, let's get this one and let's see what's going on. So first of all, we're not going to be getting the PlayStation 2 chemical controllers, so let's see what we're getting inside of the package. Is this going to be any good? Is it going to be indeed optimized, or is it just going to be another quick cash grab? So the overall box, whoa, this thing is really lightweighted. I can still remember that the other one that had some weight to it. So let's see how it also is when it comes for the teardown. So okay, so we do have the configuration with the microSD card. There was even one with just a USB card reader. They're using these non-brand SD cards still. This is like a common thing. And you know, I don't trust these things, so most of the time I'm just making a backup, because you know, if this gets corrupted, everything is gone, including the firmware and all of the settings. So let's see what we're having over here. If you're going to be ordering one of these, you need to get yourself the right version due of the power supply. I have the European version over here, 12 volt. It's a very tiny power supply, very lightweight, nothing very fancy. But the controls, let's talk about that first, because okay, why there's this some weird, oh, it's just a piece of plastic. So the overall, let's say, quality, this, I cannot feel any rumble motors in the inside. Just having a compartment of the two AAA batteries. We do have the on and off switch, so we can just fairly easy turn off the batteries. So this is actually feeling a little bit better. What is kind of cool that we do have this configuration that we can remove this, but okay, is there anything going on with the other? Let's see if I have like the other attachment, but normally you can swap this out. But so when it comes to the D-pad feel, it's not bad at all, absolutely not bad. The ABXY button do have like a little bit of a cheap feel to it, nothing really fancy. The L and R1 over here, and we do have, I don't really have the idea, they were like re-analog triggers. Do have this travel, but you do feel something of a membrane underneath. So the overall quality, it's not even rubber, it's just plastic. Is there maybe in this package? No, there was nothing extra in it. So there are no extra attachments. HDMI, the remote. Oh wait, yes, you did implement one of them. Okay, so I'm guessing there was one that's completely, like say, yeah, just got. Oh man, the other one somewhere lost in the box, but this is the one I wanted to do. Oh yeah, this is so much better. Unboxings are fun and all, let's say, but let's take a close look at the device itself. What are we actually getting? So let's zoom up close and an overview. So the G36 Pro Super Console, and they're not saying Super Console, it's kind of funny, is that when it comes to this particular device, it has some similarities of previous models we've reviewed. At the front, I'm guessing these are like the LEDs. Those will indicate if the device is powered on, and communication when it comes to the Ethernet and all the other functions. At the side, we're only going to be having two USB ports and the microSD card, where it contains all of the needed files for booting up into ME-Alec. So what is kind of cool, that they have chosen to actually have an on and off switch, something we don't have at every single device. Input for the power supply, an RJ45 connection for the internet, HDMI, and an AV out slot, but I don't think that is actually activated. It would be kind of funny to hook this thing up to an old school CRT TV with the AV out, but yeah. Let me know, what do you think? Oh, there we have it, the 3D game stick. Wait, what? Seriously? What is going on when it comes to that? We have seen those pieces of software having the 3D game stick, but okay, we do have like an intro, but let's see what's going on. How is the overall software? And this is going to be anything better, because they actually said that this is going to be the improved software. But my first impression is positive, because when it comes to the overall booting sequence, man, that was really quick. But how about the configuration of the controls? This is like super easy. You just plug in the batteries and it will automatically detect. And if you're going to be moving around with controller 1 over here, you can actually see one of these LEDs are actually blinking. You can see that's player 2 and that is going to be player 1. So we're ready to go. Let's go. But let's take a close look at the main menu first. So when it comes to compatibility, I think with these kind of boxes we do have limitations. We have seen it in the gazillion times now. However, with software there is a lot you can actually fix to a certain point. You can see they added all kinds of different systems, including Sega Saturn and even some Sega Dreamcast. And I think Dreamcast and Naomi were most of the time playable, most games, but with Sega Saturn we're going to be heading like a hit or miss situation. There was no upscaling going on with some PlayStation, same goes for PlayStation Portable. But let's see how far and what we can actually do. I think it's also cool if you just want to play some old school Atari, links, you name it. Screenshot gallery, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's power it on. Oh, oh, there's some reporting things going on. But beside that, there is absolutely a crazy amount that we can play on a device like this. Another positive thing is that they didn't lock the menu. So in other words, we can just mess around with stuff if you want to. And you don't need to be actually having a problem when you're just having an emulator that doesn't boot up. We can actually fix it on the back end if you want to. But let's go to system settings. In here we have the information. And information is with Sega we're having version 4.3 ME-ALIC. The machine, I have been playing around on it some time now, but it's hitting like 40 Celsius. It's also not a very hot day, so if you're going to be having a very hot day, it can go up. But later on with the teardown, we're going to be seeing what kind of cooling. So the chip itself is the S905X3, and we have seen it a gazillion times now. So yeah, that will combine with the GPU, that's a Mali G31. And overall, when you're going to be looking at this, it's not something of a fancy box with new specifications or Snapdragon or something else. But how optimized is it and what can we play? Because I think, and that is one of the things that was really negative throughout, like say many of the Gamebox reviews, is that because of a lot of problems. But so far so good, so let's give this thing a try and let's see how it actually works out when it comes to some emulators. And particularly when it comes to the more demanding ones like Sega Saturn and N64 or stuff like that. But there is so much that we can still play with this. So when it comes to the overall design, you can see this is just the overall design pre-installed or set up. We're having a picture at the left and the right massive list. However, what is interesting but also weird that they did add a lot of numbers. No idea why actually. However, let's see. So far the numbers are not with every single platform. Let's take a close look at Mame. Maybe it does have a little bit more information, but we have this weird thing going on that some of them don't have any overall configuration. But in general, it's not bad at all. But let's move into some old school games. Starting off with Alien Greed for the Atari 2600 or 2600. So let's see, can we actually start the game? Everything seems to be working just fine. Okay, we just need to collect this particular item every single time. I'm guessing I don't need to touch that one. What the heck is going on? Okay. Let's move into the Atari 5200s. Let's see what's going on. Let's go with Defender. So let's see how the 5200 actually works. Let's start the game. Whoa. Is this normal? It seems to me where the controls are working normally. But I'm surprised that these really old school stuff is actually working fine. If you're going to be also normally how I was playing like NES and Super NES or other 8-bit, 60-bit systems, but this seems to be working all fine out of the box. And if you want to go back to the menu, just press select and start, press it again, and we're going back. Kung Fu Master. I think I played this game a lot on the NES back in the day, but now on the 7800 Atari, I have no idea what's going on. Why can't I hit the guy? Man, graphical wise, nah, I don't like this at all. 7800, I do wonder if there are people out there who actually play that. Here, I cannot hit the guys. What the heck is going on with this crappy freaking... Oh! So unfortunate there are no bezels enabled, so everything is going to be widescreen craziness. But we're going to be playing some Atari Lynx. I did play this on the original hardware, particularly also this game. Oh, this is not going to be looking great in the game, having a big, massive television. But at least it's visible, because the original, let's say handheld, I was not fond of. However, this is kind of cool. Can I do anything else? I punch everything? No, I think that's the only thing I can do. I can just punch everything. Woohoo! I can even jump and punch. I am Batman. Come on, here we go. Yeah. Another thing we can do is by holding A. And in here we're having even the advanced game options. So you can actually see native video where it's automatically set to. Just going to be leaving it as it is. But you can switch between different emulators. But also if you want to mess around with aspect ratio, you can actually do core provided and mess around with it. If you want to have like smooth gains, binary filtering and everything you can just mess around with it. Most of the time it has been set to auto, and we're going to be having the stuff that we're having now. And I don't know if there's even some bezels enabled or at least like downloaded to the system, but if they're like actually there, you can even enable them and mess around with the aspect ratio. So MSX is another system I've personally never played on the original hardware back in the day. So it's kind of cool to actually experience these. However, let me know in the comments what kind of system did you actually start with playing when it comes to retro games. Let's go with just an old school one, Arkanoid. I was just messing with this system, but somehow I cannot get into the game itself. So there is absolutely something wrong with the controller. The configuration where Atari and other ones did work. Let's see if I can enable the other controller. Maybe this is something to do with a configuration issue. No, not really. So this is clearly something wrong with the settings of the controller. And that's quite unfortunate. Ha! The Vectrex. Man, I even did a dedicated video to this piece of hardware. It was such an interesting concept. Yeah, I think it's not the right resolution. But there we go. Can we actually start it up? But this is the second system that does have some weird issues going on. And that's it. PC Engine. Oh man, I also did a dedicated videos on the hardware, and I must say that I have become a big fan of, let's say, the overall system. However, let's get into some Alien Crush. Man, I have a crush at this game, because this, visual-wise, this is looking so cool. But it's a quite brutal pinball game, that's one thing for sure. Oh, there we go. Whoa, flicking between two screens. Oh! Well, beside the emulation performance of these systems, you can see that it's not going to be a problem emulating that. But the major problem we're going to be having is sometimes configuration. And it's kind of weird that some of the systems didn't have any controls enabled or something was wrong. But let's get into some other games. Moving on to the PC Engine Super CD-ROM system. That is also did a dedicated video on the hardware. Absolutely awesome. With some Double Dragon. And I think this is absolutely one of those systems that is a lot of fun to just revisit. Oh, they have these controls, and we're going to be having one button for the left part. Man, getting brutally like I'm getting completely ganked over here. Come on! This game is freaking annoying. And I thought like Golden Egg was always like kicking my ass. Why are those guys screaming like girls? Or were they guys? Or were they actually guys? So next up, I wanted to check out the game for the Super Graphics system. I think it was like the sequel to the system and device itself. Let's see the overall D-pad response. Not bad at all. Why am I so slow? Isn't this like the game that I need to upgrade? So the controls are kind of interesting. We can switch between 6-button and 2-button mode when it comes to the PC Engine controller, so that's kind of cool. But graphical wise, this game looks pretty cool. But I did notice if you're going to be looking at some of the lists, you can see like this one is missing a picture, and we have like double. So with the NES, it's unfortunate that they implemented some weird filter automatically over it, so we don't have the pixelated original look. So that's more like a personal thing. I think they're doing this because if you're going to be using this on a massive television, it's not going to be the overall best graphics that you're going to be having when you're having like a pixelated game. So the top is a little bit cut off. So for configuration wise, there's a lot of improvement there. But so far, performance of the game is, of course, no problem. I'm playing a beat 'em up game. I must say the D-pad is absolutely nice, very responsive. Pah! Yeah! But if you're going to be looking at some of the lists over here, we don't have all the crazy double games, so this is not on every single platform. Super NES time with some rock and roll racing. The question remains, what do you think of this game? Is this going to be better on the Sega Genesis? Or do you like to play this on the Super NES? Because if you're going to be listening to the music, man, it's such, I think it's one of my favorite racing games for the 16-bit era. Pop, 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 pop. And I think you had another one, like Biker Mice from Mars with a similar one. I love like that one too. That was an absolutely amazing game. Similar when it comes to mechanics. I'm just playing with the analog stick now, just for fun to see how accurate it is, but I can tell you that I'm surprised how well this plays. Normally I'm always using, of course, a D-pad original systems. I have the idea that the analog stick gives me the option to make sharper turns. There may be something in my head. Ooh, there we go. Yeah, I still have the idea that, okay, let's give it another try with the next corner. Here we go. Oh, okay, that was my own mistake. Yep, I messed it up. Well, the unfortunate part is every single freaking game is widescreen, and you don't want to play a game like this. But first, let's do a little bit of gameplay to see how that actually runs. Oh, this game brings so many memories. I've played that so much on my Game Boy, and there were actually like 3 of them, and I can tell you that number 1 and the number 3 were my favorite ones. Where the 3 version was absolutely brutal when it comes to the overall game mechanics. But the question remains, can we reset it? I mess around with the settings. Because if you're going to be looking into advanced, let's see if I can force it to get into, let's see, bezels, yes please, aspect ratio, it's core provided. Square pixel, to be honest, this is one of the tricky ones to game aspect ratio, which one I need to set up. Ooh, it doesn't matter. Let's see if it even do something. It does enable, yeah, it does actually enable the bezels, but I tried to force it in different aspect ratios, but that part doesn't really work. That is quite unfortunate. So I need to mess around a little bit more with it. But stuff like this isn't set up. Also, when it comes to the N64, we see all these weird numbers in front of it, but it doesn't affect the alphabetic order so far I can see. Don't you love it when they remove Cruise in the USA? Because I'm always testing that one out. Okay, let's try Cruise in the World to see how that actually runs, because that's a good test. Most of the time it's a mixed thing going on, but let's see what's going on with the Cruise in the World. Cruise in the World, let's see how far we can cruise in the world with this. So I think I'm going to be testing out a couple of games to see what's actually going on with N64, because this is always like the biggest problem with emulation of N64. Ooh, there we go. But if they tinker enough with it, you can have some games be playable. Oof, I can tell you that the analog stick is really, really sensitive. Or maybe this is just me. Didn't play this game too much. There we go. So far, so good. Okay. I wanted to try some Forsaken. Well, let's see what's going on. Well, it seems to be working fine. I did some weird glitches throughout the game. Didn't do any recording about that, but I think that's one of the things that we need to live with when it comes for emulation on low-end chips. But yeah. But so far, so good. There's some minor hiccup there. Let's see what's going on. Oh, okay, so both of the joysticks. Ooh. Oh crap. Okay, that's weird. So the buttons are not mapped correctly. Simply because they're using the L2 and the R1. That's kind of weird. But also when it comes to navigation, okay, the right joystick is correctly configured. Ah, there we go. Need to get used to it, that's one thing for sure. But yeah, it seems to work on fine. Of course, they're not the most difficult in games to emulate. But it's great to see that we can actually play N64 on some of these cheaper devices. But the list of N64 is completely filtered out because the games are really difficult to emulate. Think about the GoldenEye, same thing, that has been just removed or is not there. So I just wanted to point out that optimizing, I think this is more like indeed like removing games that not able to run with the S905X3 chip. But so far, also when it comes to some Game Boy Advance, everything is widescreen shenanigans. However, I'm not going to be messing with the settings. Also a filter has been implemented. It's kind of interesting to see that they're doing this with like some certain generation of games or just handheld games, but I understand. Because some of the games are looking super pixelated if you're going to be just using this on a bigger screen. I'm just using a 24-inch now, but here we don't see any problems going on. So let's check out some DS. How will it run? So first of all, I'm not the biggest fan of this, with a simple reason, because yeah, you need to mess with the screens and everything. We do have the touch with the stylus that you can move. So with the L2 we can switch between different way how you want to actually use the screens. And then let's see if we can move around with some other screens. Right joystick will enable the emulator itself. But the weird thing is that I cannot figure out how to actually get the analog. Is the analog stick not configured? No. Normally you can switch between screens. Let's see if we can do it over here. I don't see any exchanging options. We can see if we can mess around, show speed and everything, but the emulation performance seems to be quite nice. Save for all the games. Yes, please. And let's continue with the game. But emulation performance, I didn't see any problems there. But normally what you can do is switch between one screen and just play, because now we don't really need a map, or at least I don't need to. We're back with 8-bit systems, because we're going to be checking out some MOS system. Let's see how this is configured. With some Alex Kit, Shinobi's World or some kind it is. So, you know, the MOS system, I personally completely skipped the MOS system because it was not a really popular system. We're all into the NES. But I can tell you, revisiting these old school games, they're kind of fun. Particularly Alex Kit is one of those games that I personally not played a lot. But those simulation seems to be fine. I don't say they actually added some filter, but the SG-1000. I think I made the mistake of having the not right order, because I think I needed to start with the SG-1000 and then the MOS system. But again, I just wanted to check it out, like the old school MSX or the other stuff that we checked out, like Atari. And of course the Sega Genesis, one of my favorite systems. I think this is still one of my systems I still love to play today. With some Street of Rage 2 or some really cool hacked version of that. Nevertheless, it would be cool to have like, you know what's kind of cool? If they made like a sort of like Street of Rage 2 remake and make it compatible with the Sega 32X. That is even graphical enhancing the game, or just Street of Rage remake that they try to manage to get working on an old school Sega system. However, I love this game. The over emulation is perfect. Don't notice any weird thing going on. Don't see any weird filters. No, they did implement something. But doesn't look this shabby. And also the D-pad is absolutely awesome and responsive. Oh! There we go. Oh, ultra crazy widescreen Sega Game Gear emulation. Oh, well, Sonic Gales was absolutely my favorite game to play on my Sega Game Gear. I love that system. It was such a cool thing. Was draining batteries like crazy. Oh man, if you like those cheap batteries, man oh man. You could play like for a couple of hours and it was already empty. But in the end, those games were pretty cool. Sonic Chaos was one of my favorite because we had all of those cool things that we had with the Sonic normal games on the Sega Genesis, like spinning. The only weird thing I ever noticed, like, I don't even know, but if you're going to be playing this game, the flying rockets. And that's something I'd never seen before when it comes to the other Sega Genesis games. Oh, we got another rocket. Well, we do also have Sega Saturn in this device. However, this is going to be the same situation like many of those other like N64. It's going to be an hit or miss with the simple reason this is a very difficult overall emulator to run, and I think it's absolutely cool to see that we can actually run this on an S905 X3 chip. But when you're going to be looking into what it can actually do when it comes to more 3D graphical games, that's going to be absolutely an hit or miss situation. But it is cool to actually play some Super Bomberman from the Sega Saturn here on the simple low power chip that is in here. Okay, how do I drop the bomb? What the? Oh, there we go. L1. What the hell is L1 for button? Battle Stations. That is one of those games I've never seen before. So let's see what's going on with Battle Stations. Loading times can be a little bit faster than the original device. So we can actually choose all kinds of cool things. So let's we're having carrier, battleship, destroyer, cruiser, patrol boat, mine layer. Okay, let's go with the destroyer. That sounds pretty cool. You want to sure? No, I don't want to quit. I want to freaking choose that. Oh wait, I need to press L1. Yeah, they had like L1 set to freaking A. I have no idea why that's so weird, but doesn't matter. Okay, let's see what's going on. There's player 2. So this is actually a very nice graphical game. I have no idea what's actually happening now. I have no idea, but frames per second seems to be working fine. I can steer. I cannot shoot. Oh, there we go. Oh, when I'm in the range of him, I can actually shoot. Yeah, it's an interesting game. Okay. Ha! I'm just pushing buttons! What an interesting but weird game at the same time. Seriously. Next up, some Sega Dreamcast. I think it's kind of cool to see that we have all kinds of different systems now. I couldn't really enable the frames per second counter, so visual wise, if I'm looking at it, I don't see that this thing stutters. Of course, it's still running an original native resolution. But so far, everything seems to be working fine. But let's move into the arcade part of the Sega with the Naomi system. But let's see what's going on here. So, does it actually run okay? Okay, the analog stick doesn't do anything, so that hasn't been configured. So we need to use a D-pad at this point. The inventory cannot seem to enable the M frames per second, but so far I don't really notice a lot of hiccup, particularly when it comes to the normal gameplay. Of course, sometimes we can have power dip, or at least like dips, when it comes to the super moves, but also there I don't really notice some crazy stuff going on. So emulation performance of the Giga Wing 2 seems to be working just fine. So we're into the arcade zone, so let's take a close look at some Neo Geo with Breaker's Revenge. But at the same time I also wanted to check out how is the overall D-pad responding, because with shmups it seems to be working fine. Yeah, this is great. This is absolutely great. Is the analog stick configured? Yep, it is. So when it comes to the controls, yeah, they absolutely nailed it. So where I was playing on my Game Boy back in the day, I can tell you that I absolutely missed out on the Neo Geo Pocket, because this is such a fun system. It had a lot of great games, and the tiny joystick on the device made playing so much different than the Game Boy itself. So playing these games back now on the, let's say, big screen, this is not like the ultimate experience. Personally, like in Game Boy Advance, I don't really mind playing that on a bigger screen. But when it comes to playing these kind of games, I really love to play it on the original Neo Geo Pocket. And yep, you can even buy yourself a Neo Geo Pocket Color, add an IPS panel to it. That's absolutely awesome. And I think that is going to be absolutely one of the ultimate ways to play these games nowadays. Emulation is a way to play, but let's be honest, come on, this is going to be looking absolutely hideous on a big screen. It even looks horrible on my 24-inch screen here. The Rumble Fish. Yeah, there's another game. We're still into the arcade zone. I'm going to be moving away from the screen, or at least the microphone, because oh man, this thing is loud. So Rumblefish is a game I've personally never played a lot, but you know, this is going to be another like weird Street Fighter game. Graphical wise, this game looks really nice. Okay, so I wanted to try the Mame, but select brush. It doesn't matter. It doesn't want to freaking input my credits. I'm guessing this is going to be. Yep, absolutely. That's the only thing I can say about it. What I can do actually is go into this part of the emulation scene. Then go advanced game options. Advanced Mame, okay. Maybe mess around with the emulators like Mame 2010. Just leave it as it is. Okay, save, yes. Oh crap. Let's boot it up, and if it even boots up, what we can do now is see if it maps the controller, because that is also sometimes an issue. Yep, that's it. Okay. There's this weird problem, you know, that you want to play to have like the similar controller, stuff like that. Otherwise we need to do a deep dive into the emulator itself, see what's going on. But this way we can just fix it per game. But there is so much more stuff that we can check out. Oh man, I forgot to play Mega Drive 32X. Whoops. Or didn't I? I did. I did forget this. Yeah, I did forget it. Ah! Oh! So, Sega 32X is a system we're going to be seeing more and more on these devices. Even some basic plug and play. Yeah, however, there are not a lot of, let's say, great games on this system, if you ask me. I think lately they've been releasing, let's say, games like Doom, Resurrection. And it would be cool to see what's going to come more out of it, like when it comes to, let's say, custom games for the Sega 32X. But let's be honest, this game is something that is cool, but you can also play the original arcade game if you want to. Assault Rigs on the PlayStation 1 is such a cool game. However, I'm a little bit bummed out because there's no audio. And you know, the audio part, man, is so cool. Because this game has some really funky music. Where can I shoot the rocket? Oh, I can even move sideways, so that's kind of cool. Oh. Haha. Man, it was such a cool game. You should check it out. It's more like a puzzle racing tank game. Okay, so it looks like also have been implemented, so that's cool. Cyber Sled. That was a game I can still remember when I got it back in the day. And at first I was like, what is this kind of polygon looking game? But this was such an interesting game because you can also play against each other. And this was absolutely one of my favorite games I've played for a long time. So let's see, let's again revisit and bring up some memories. Here we go. Loading, loading, loading. and there was nothing much going on. Why is this bloody loading take forever? What is going on with this? I don't want to just be negative all the freaking time, but somehow I'm jinxed or something. Every single time I'm booting up a game, it doesn't matter how, I do sometimes find problems with these devices. And this is, you know, first the new music, and the new music is also with the Destruction Derby game. Yeah, where you can see actually the emulation performance seems to be working fine. Yeah, this is quite unfortunate. The game seems to be working fine so far. Also the intro didn't notice any hiccups there. But when it comes to, let's say, the overall performance, yeah, the previous game didn't even get through the loading page. And what you can always do is like see if there's another emulator to see if that works out. But yeah, so emulation, if the game actually starts up, entirely possible it doesn't have music. But ah, man, Die Hard Trilogy, another game with absolutely awesome soundtracks and has no freaking music. So yep, they should like use bigger SD cards and then actually just say like add the music. And the same is also when it comes to Sega Saturn Dreamcast, but I think the overall, let's say, removing of the PlayStation 1 soundtrack seems to be a common problem and maybe easier to do. There were different games. PlayStation Portable is a really interesting platform. However, on this S905X3, it's not going to be running great. So we shall start off with Ghost of Sparta with God of War. Because, you know, this is not going to be running great. Or they nerfed it to a level that it's going to be absolutely unplayable. Or not even to look at. Okay, we do have like 30 frames per second. Okay, so what did they change out? Let's press the right joystick. That was the one I was searching for. Going to the game settings, we're finding they're using OpenGL. They're having frame skipping set to 2. They are forcing it to maximum frames per second 50. And they're doing a lot of tweaking to get this at least working. And running resolution, I noticed like they're doing that a lot. But I think they're doing this because it still looks okay. Because if you're going to be putting an original resolution, it's going to be looking absolutely horrible. But getting into the game, you can actually see that it is not even hitting like 15 frames per second. You know, the S905X3 is not a device that is absolutely great for PlayStation Portable. So I've been messing with some of these games and I can tell you that, you know, seeing all of these systems, they're just underpowered. When I actually see the frames per second, 90 frames, 80 frames, they're doing the best to optimize this, but it's just underpowered. Let's see, can I actually do something here? Okay, there we go. That makes me wonder if you're having a simple game like Jetpack Joyride. How did he configure that? Okay, so there was no skipping, but it did force it to maximum 50 frames per second. Let's see what's going on. Let's boot it up. Normally these minis will run fine, or at least playable situation. Wait, let me check one thing. How's with the resolution? Okay, so let's put this on one time. Okay, let's go. That's much better. So overall, when you're going to be looking at these minis and you play them original resolution, maybe you can do upscaling with some of them. It's going to be an okay situation. But I think it's you know, they so want to badly include the freaking PlayStation Portable every single time. But you know, it's very difficult to find a lot of games, I think, that can be played on, say, like the overall best resolution and have still an overall great time. Jetpack Joyride, come on, there we go! Haha, teleporting. Going crazy. Oh, messed it up. But this is a game I've played so much. You should check it out. You can also get it on Android. I think even the Apple Store. So cool. But this game is getting really nasty, really fast when it comes to that. But the overall emulation, you can do so much with a box like this, but of course comes with a lot of limitations. So overall performance, I must say that he was actually like saying like we have been tweaking this, so I was really intrigued by it, so that's the reason I just wanted to pick it up from the AliExpress page. But this is what you're getting when it comes to the overall performance, and so far I tested most stuff that's actually here when it comes to different platforms. But also using this thing for some time, it's hitting around like 46 Celsius maximum. So that makes me wonder, how is the overall cooling of this thing? But for the teardown / conclusion, how about the cooling? What can we actually find inside of this thing? Yeah, nothing much, or actually nothing at all, when it comes to some passive or active cooling. It's quite unfortunate, because I think it will help out if this is going to be using daily. This thing can just heat up like crazy. Some passive pieces of metal would be like giving a little bit better cooling, and even adding a fan. We have seen it with the S905X3. I think it was called the Max Pro things. However, the chips, that is interesting. So let's do a little bit of an angle. As you can see the chip, this actually says S95L, but in the software it says S95X3. Okay, that is super confusing. So the name of the chip is different than actually in the software itself. How the hell is that possible? However, the configuration is almost similar to the first generation of Supercon SIG devices. I mean, when it comes to the green PCB and everything else. But if you want to do an in-depth, we should like put side by side and tear them down. Also, they're still using these, let's say, non-brand SD cards. They can get corrupted fairly easy, or that's my experience. But also when it comes to, let's say, real brands, think about Kingston, Samsung, SanDisk, you name it. Those are like really quick, and when it comes to performance and speed, it will also benefit the device itself too. But controller-wise, this thing has been improved significantly compared with the other models. They're using these very interesting ones. I think like by Top or some of those brands it's a similar molds, but they don't smell chemical anymore. But it's absolutely awesome that we're having an interchangeable D-pad, if you're not going to be forgetting for adding those. However, the overall compatibility with the games are just great. We did notice throughout, let's say, the emulators, some of them didn't recognize the control, but I think that's more like a software issue itself. The quality, I must say that I'm surprised how well it actually plays when it comes to the joystick, but also when it comes to the D-pad, no matter what kind of, let's say, conversion we're going to be having when it comes to these pieces of plastic. So when it comes to controllability, this is absolutely a big improvement, and I'm very happy they added a normal controller for once. Only it doesn't come, how do you add this freaking thing to it? Oh, there we go. So, but we don't have any, let's say, rumble motor built in. The G36 Pro Super Console. So this is what you're going to be getting. No active cooling or passive cooling. The controls are an improvement. Still the crappy non-brand SD cards. No rumble with the controllers, by the way. And the overall performance when you're looking at, let's say, the S905X3 chip that's actually in here, if you need to believe the software, that is going to be, you know, fun for basic stuff, but the more demanding emulators will not run, or you need to tweak like crazy to get something going on. Thank you all for watching, consider subscribing, and it would be great to see you in the next video.